Hey guys, Chris here. I want today to talk about toxic relationships and forgiving your parents. So, when you're attracting certain types of people into your life as part of the healing journey, how this feeds into your parents, and as I've been told, maybe you might have been told as well, forgive you. People say forgive your parents, love yourself, forgive yourself, these sort of things. So, I wanted to talk about that and what I've learned on this. And as we talk on semen retention as well, this is stuff that you can't just put your head in the sand. It's something that you will eventually have to focus on and improve that relationship, because relationships are coming and going out of your life, but your parents, your family are going to be, with you for a massive time of your life, if not all of your life. So, the toxic relationships that you are attracting into your life are on a level maybe something that you are wanting from your parents. So if you meet someone who's a partner and you really want their validation, you're going to get their validation, but maybe they then end up crossing a lot of your boundaries, and the pain allows you to see where you're giving your power away. Like, okay, I need this person's approval, this person's crossing these boundaries. Okay, how does this relate to the relationship with my mum or the relationship with my dad? And you begin to see level up, and it's like a painful lesson, but you then get to see maybe what was underneath the surface, maybe what you wasn't aware of. And as the relationship stops bothering you, you get to this relationship maybe with your parents where you see them as they were, that they are just loving you, the best that they can. They've done all that they can. Not everyone is on this rapid recovery, self-growth journey where they're learning about all this stuff with boundaries. This might be just such a certain generational kind of thing, to really want to fix it. And these people as well, these toxic people coming into your life are living you conditionally as well. They're living you on their limits. So to expect them to be any different, if they're crossing your boundaries and they appear like they don't love themselves, to expect them to then love you the level that you want or unconditionally is just very, it's just not the right expectation to have, and it's something that you can't do. Fixing is a big one as well. So this maybe, if you want to meet someone, if you meet someone and you feel like, you might need to fix them or save them or their potential, or they could be where they want to get to, then maybe a bit more damaged, and it gives you something. They can't love you the way that maybe you want to be loved. They can't love you the way you love yourself. So this is, again, is seeing that in these relationships, you're wanting what you perhaps can't get from your parents. So as you begin to have the expectations, knowing their limits, like, okay, this person can only love me based on how they can love themselves, then you become more free of it, and you level up with the so-called toxic relationship. If you're like, I need my dad to be, a leader, and he needs to show me direction, I need someone to show me the way, you're more likely, if you can relate to myself, to attract some sort of toxic male, like narcissistic guy into your life. And because you're like, I desperately need someone to show me, rather than you doing it yourself. But then as they start to show you in a toxic way, you then get to see the light and like, okay, that's not the way to do it. I'm going to have to step up and do it myself. And that is the big reward, that you get to do it more authentically. And eventually, you trust yourself more, you have boundaries separating yourself from these people, or separate, like with your parents, having boundaries there and saying like, I'm not going to be spoken to like this way. If you have a friend or somebody who's talking to you quite disrespectfully, you have the boundaries there. And then you realize that, okay, this narcissistic person has crossed these boundaries, I can't allow someone to do that. So then you then set those boundaries with the parent. So where this actually comes into, with forgiveness is, how do you actually forgive them is the big question. And I've obviously done something where I've tried to sit down and tell them, or write a letter and send it to them, and they were both very difficult. But I think if you really know it in yourself, if you can maybe even write a letter, and you don't need to have that difficult conversation, if you can, then great. But most likely what's going to happen is they're not going to really understand, and whether you can let that go, ultimately it's just whatever it means in yourself, you know, because if there is still that side of you that wants that side of them to get you, you know, you want them to see the world the way you see it. You want them to all of a sudden wake up and be on this self-growth journey, or see you doing semen retention and saying that's great, or, you know, the way the world is, and all of these things. You know, that's very different. You know, everyone's on their own journey. You have to do this alone. But what happens when you forgive them is I think you really become an adult. Like, you really step away from, you know, you see people who are trying to be a rebel and this, and they're rebelling against the government or society or whatever. In that way, obviously, maybe I could be a bit like that. But with that anger charge is, again, it's just like fighting a parent, you know, blaming their parents for things, blaming people, blaming the, you know, because that's what can happen. If you're blaming relationships, you're blaming the parents as well. So the relationship failures are just bringing you back to seeing what you're not getting. And then when you stop blaming, you're free. You know, you can't, you've got no excuses. You can't blame your parents anymore. You know, you can't blame, you can just be grateful, and you can build up from that, and you can get on with your life, and you can think about what you actually want to attract in your life, and you most likely become more securely attached in terms of your relationships. You can set boundaries, you can respect yourself, you meet someone else who's like that, which will massively separate you from a good 90+% of the population, most likely. So you end up in this own place, and the healing then is kind of over in that sense, you know, because the healing is a lot to do with you and what you didn't get as a child, and the relationship that's still maybe ongoing with the parents, and then the relationships around you. So when you have healthy relationships around you, you know the journey is kind of over. From that, it's always going to be growing. You're always going to get deeper at deeper levels. Maybe you do still attract some sort of toxic people, but when I've been in a lot of these spiritual communities, you know, most recently maybe out here in Thailand, and you see a lot of people who are just really trying to find something, or they're really damaged from their childhoods. You know, a lot of people are suffering. You kind of tend to want to be in those environments less, because you realize you're just with a lot of people who are like trying to heal themselves, or you become some sort of healer yourself. But then you know who you are, and what your role is, and you're not just trying to fit in with certain people in a certain place. You're like, okay, I've healed myself now, I know who I am, and I can take responsibility for my life. I'm an adult. So yeah, I want to do this video today talking about this, because this is a big part of the recovery. And semen retention, as we've talked about, the more you can retain your energy, your life force energy, it will bring you to this fact. And sometimes you might question, as for me, it's always been spoken about attracting a lot of energy vampires, people who want your energy. And the reason for that is obviously because you have a lot of energy, but also because you're awakening at a lot quicker rate. You know, your third eye is opening. You're seeing all of these relationships for what they really are. You're seeing the relationship with your parents as it really is. And you're becoming this like super powerful person, which can be exciting. You know, it can be scary, but it can also be exciting. And that's more of a reason to keep staying, retaining the energy, where the benefits keep coming. And other things we've talked about as well, whether it's coming off alcohol or caffeine and all of these sort of things, all this sugar, all this junk food, it starts to, you know, you start to open up a lot more and see these things and heal yourself and look after your own body. You know, you realize like I am of value. You know, I care about myself. You know, this thing of loving yourself, what does it mean to love yourself is just that. It's like, how will I, if I really love something, how would I treat it? You know, so it's like you're treating yourself with that respect, from everything, from what you put in to the boundaries, from the energy and everyone you protect yourself from, and what you do in your life. So hope you enjoyed that video, and look forward to seeing you in a future one.